We're talking today with Rik Brown of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Okay, so Rik, start us off with some background on yourself, and to begin with, where and when were you born?
Indianapolis, Indiana, 1946. My dad was just started his orthopedic residency at that time.
Okay, did you grow up in Indianapolis or did you move around?
He moved to Fort Wayne when he finished his residency 2 years later, 48.
Okay, and is that where you went to high school?
It is.
Okay, and so when did you graduate from high school?
1964, Southside High.
Okay, and then when you got out, what did you do?
I went to Kemper Military College. Didn't want to go to school. I wanted to join the Navy for 4 years. And my mom somehow heard about Kemper Military College. A guy bangs on my door. One day out of the clear, I just happened to be home. And he said to my mom, who answered the door, "Is Rik home?" Yes, I was. "We want you to play football for us." I go, "What?" I was not a good football player.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. So I went to Kemper Military College.
So where is that?
Boonville, Missouri.
Okay, so that has shut down since then?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And
wonderful experience, though.
Okay, well, to talk a little bit. I mean, how did that actually work? I mean, what was the routine for you, or how was that structured that's different from a regular college?
Well, they pushed how to study. I was not a great student, but I thought I could use that. I thought I wanted to be a physician. One day, my dad was orthopedic surgeon, and the military, I thought the structure would do me good. And I was out of shape. The last year of school, I quit all sports because I was tired of all the guys drinking on the team. Didn't want to do that. And I gained weight.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, okay, if I play football, I'll lose weight. I did. So when you get to Kemper Military College, you're a plebe, a neophyte, and you have to brace, all following a red line around every corridor, every hallway, every stairway. You have to only speak to an upperclassman when you're spoken to. You have to eat square meals. And you do this with other guys, and you become very good friends. You become very close. You drill together, marching drills with rifles, the whole schmear. And then you're playing football, and then you study, and then you sleep. That's all there was to do. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to guess there were about 200 college students. They also had a high school attached.
Okay, so 200, with that divided, was it a 2-year school or?
Yeah, 2 years.
Okay, so basically 100 in each class kind of thing?
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess the structure of it sounds a lot like what you would get in the military academies.
Absolutely. It was run by retired military officers, career people, and we wore military Army uniform. If you were no longer after your first year, you would wear green Army-looking uniforms. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
With ranks, full ranks.
All right. Now you're in a 2-year school, so you finish in '66?
No, I didn't fit.
Well,
no.
or at least there 2 years. Or
I
what
asked
happened?
my chemistry professor, who I loved, adored. I made the dean's list,
Mm-hmm.
so I really learned how to study.
Okay.
And there was a little guy across the hall from Peoria, Illinois, who said, "I'm going to beat you, Rik, in your GPA." And I said, "No, you're not." We were a 1/10 of a point difference. Mm-hmm. I was 1/10 higher than him. And I asked my chemistry professor, "I think I want to stay pre-med. Do you suggest I stay here for the second year or transfer to IU, Indiana University?" Mm-hmm. He said, "I'd transfer." So I did.
Okay. So you have 1 year at the military academy, and then you go to Indiana University. Now, as long as you're now that gets you to 1965.
Uh-huh.
In 1965, summer of '65, we're sending troops over to Vietnam, and that is starting to ramp up. Were you paying any attention to that at the time?
Who wasn't paying attention to Vietnam? But was I worried about it? No.
Mm-hmm.
I was much more worried about studying, mm-hmm. about really buckling down. and kind of nervous about transferring from a very small junior college, very structured, to a school where there were about 35,000 students, and how I was going to handle that.
All right. So, so how did that go?
I had severe ADD, and as I look back on it, I would say depression. I made the mistake of asking for a single room in a men's dorm, and there was a guy across the hall who I befriended. We befriended each other and enjoyed that relationship very well. I pledged a fraternity because I knew one of the guys from high school, Delta Tau Delta. They never asked me to do anything. It was the first time they had out-of-house pledges. All the pledges before that were living in the house, believe it or not, even as pledges. So they would pick on those pledges all the time and then forget about Bill and me. We both pledged the Delts. So we felt left out. We went to a couple parties, that was about it. So the brotherhood that you develop when you're pledges together, there was no brotherhood.
Yeah.
And because I was depressed by studying really hard and just Bill and I doing things and a few dates now and then, I remember laying out on the bed, all my books, and I took 3 5-hour courses at the same time. Invertebrate zoology, which was a 300 level course, dumb, no counselor, organic chemistry, and Spanish. And I remember my books laying out on the bed, studying like crazy, underlining stuff, had no idea what I was doing. Organic chemistry, flunked. Didn't understand a thing. Never even thought of getting a tutor. Was really good at qualitative and quantitative and qualitative analysis in chemistry, physics, trig, all that stuff. I had all that stuff, good at that. So I thought I can handle organic chemistry. I heard about the course, but I thought I could handle that. Invertebrate zoology was way, way above my level. Spanish, I had a B+ in the non-didactic portion because a kid down the hallway was Puerto Rican. So I could speak the language better than anybody in the class. I went to lab maybe 2 or 3 times and figured I've got this, so I never went to lab. Flunked that course because I didn't read the syllabus well enough. If you didn't go to lab, you weren't going to pass the course. So 0.0 from 3 point whatever I had, 9 or something at Kemper to 0.0. And I remember telling my dad, who, again, medical school, orthopedic residency, and he never got mad. He asked me, what in the hell was going on with you? And this is way before they understood ADD.
Right.
And I was culture shock, I call it, at IU. From 200 students to 35,000 lost. So I went to register for classes and they said, I said, I suppose you're going to tell me I can't register. And they said, we don't have time to flunk you out. Huh? Can I register? Sure. So I took some easier classes, got a 2.7, don't even remember what I took. Personal finance was one of them, one of the best courses I've ever had. Sociology, anthropology, can't remember what else. Then I took organic chemistry again in the summer and studied my butt off, still no tutor, passed the course, but in so doing, because it was such a hard course, and I took Spanish again. They had a pre-summer session, 3 hours, regular summer session, 6 hours, post-session. So I could take 12 hours in the whole summer. So I made all that up, passed organic chemistry, and then I thought, this is nuts. I don't think I want to be a doc, I'm not sure. So I went home and couldn't explain to my dad why I flunked all those courses. 0.0.
Yep.
And I said, I don't want to go back to school. I want to develop my own Peace Corps, kind of, because if you're not a college grad, you couldn't do Peace Corps. I would have loved to have done Peace Corps. And so I said, I want a factory job. And my dad knew a lot of people that worked at Essex Wire, some of the executives. So I went to the chief legal counsel for Essex Wire, and I said, I would like the lowest job you've got. He said, you're sure? I said, yes. I've been raised with a silver spoon. I want to know what it's like on the other side. And he came back 2 weeks later and he said, janitor. I said, that's the lowest job you've got? Yes. I said, I'll take it. So he's scraping hardcore steel grates, the ones with the X's all over them, grease like crazy. Did that for 2 weeks, thought I'd work really hard and somebody would notice me. And an older guy, 40, paid some attention to me, kind of befriended me, and I would have lunch with him frequently. And I said, what's wrong with this place? I'm working really hard. Isn't that how you get promoted in this world? He said, no. He said, you see that guy standing over there? I said, yeah. That's the union steward. Go talk to him. I did. I complained. 2 weeks later, got a new job. A magnet wire rewinder. And the magnet wire is wound on a big, huge spool. It's copper that's shaped, either round or square, depending on how big the application. And it goes up into these big, huge ovens, gets a chemical insulator on it, and then goes through these ovens, comes back down and wound on a spool. And these spools are about this high. And my job was to put the spool where it wasn't wound perfectly down at that end, run the wire to the spool in front of me, turn on the machine, and make sure it does that smoothly. And I fell asleep at this machine, probably, I don't know, a month later, something like that. And I got this finger caught in it. It woke me up, and the machine slides back and forth like this. My finger got caught in there, and I thought for sure when that opens up again and slides over, that end of my finger is going to be gone. There was just, and you can see the scar there was just enough room for the bone, the scar tissue to move the muscle all around. My finger was still there. I said, I'm going back to school.
Okay.
So I worked in surgery for about 6 months until I got into and decided where to go. Hillsdale College in Hillsdale, Michigan, 1,100 students, much better. So applied to the Navy Reserves for college deferment, got it, ended up graduating from there, and then active duty.
Okay. So when do you enter the Naval Reserve?
1966.
Okay.
Now this is interesting too. My dad's business manager was on the local draft board. Had no idea. He called me one day. Hey, Rick, what branch of the service do you like? This was 66. I said, none. Why? And now I'm more aware of Vietnam and the demonstrations and on and on. And he said, well, you might want to start looking around. I'm on your local draft board and your name is up next month. I thought my mind instantly went to infantry, army, shooting, being shot at, didn't want to kill anybody. I believed our country knew more about why we needed to be in Vietnam. I was wrong. And my dad being a veteran, World War II, flight surgeon, Japanese theater, Hawaii, stationed mostly in Hawaii, I think. I need to verify all that. And so I talked to an officer who was in the Air Force, and I talked to somebody in the Navy and decided, okay, I'm going to join the Navy because I had never heard of ships offshore being attacked. I didn't think the North Vietnamese even had a Navy, maybe. VC heard of, NVA heard of, never ships being hit. I thought, if they send me to Vietnam on a ship, then pretty safe.
Yeah.
So I thought, I'll do that. And I've been a swimmer, competitive swimmer when I was younger, and love water and love the ocean, love ships. I thought, because remember, I wanted to join the Navy for 4 years. I thought that would have been a blast. See the world, onboard ship, hopefully, etc. And so I joined the Navy Reserves in '66 to avoid being drafted.
Right, because '66 is when they started to do really massive drafts for Vietnam. And there was a draft going on already, but they ramped it up. So a lot of the people from this West Michigan area who were drafted, there's a whole bunch of them that went in '66. So you managed to dodge that particular bullet. Okay, now once you've joined the reserves, what do you do prior to going to active duty?
Well, you're in that particular reserve program, you are committed to, of course, 6 years total. 1 year active reserve, weekly meetings. You dress up in your gown, your blues, you know, and whites in the summer. And then 2 years active duty, 1 year active reserve, and then 2 years of inactive reserve was the commitment.
Right.
And so I did 1 year of active reserve. That's then when I went to Hillsdale College.
Okay.
Got the college deferment.
Now, do they send you for basic training when you sign up, or does that come later?
I'm a little foggy about exactly when that occurred, but you learn some of the terminology. You look through some books and you learn what the bow is, the stern, and port and starboard and all that stuff, all the lingo,
Right.
and very basic stuff. And you get tested on possible jobs for you. And I remember flunking horribly the radio men because with ADD, there was no way I could listen to all that stuff. And then all the interference, static, everything else, no, that was not my bailiwick. Other tests I don't even remember. And why it didn't occur to me to be a medical corpsman, because I thought I was wanted to be pre-med, maybe still be a doc. I love photography. Never even thought about that either. Thank God, frankly, for my longevity. I never thought of those two things.
Yeah, especially being a corpsman.
Yes.
You would have been with the Marines.
No kidding. And did I understand exactly what corpsmen did at that time in the Navy? No, I didn't. I learned that later. So sometime when it was warm, Great Lakes Naval Training Center, supposed to be boot camp. I wore a pair of chukkas and never even walked fast, let alone boot camp. I pictured it being physical.
Yeah.
No, it was not the least bit physical. There were no workouts, nothing.
Wow.
I thought, okay, that's pretty cool. I mean, I wouldn't mind being in shape, but that's pretty cool. I'm very athletic and have always been, and I thought, all right, I'd be in shape again. And spent most of the time on a wet dock minesweeper. That was my boat experience, my only boat experience, ship experience in the United States Navy.
So that's on Lake Michigan?
That was on Lake Michigan, and I loved every second of it. I loved swabbing the deck. I loved learning about the boat. I loved going up and down the ladders, even being on the water, not going anywhere. I loved it because I love boats. I love the water. I thought that would be cool. Not knowing anything about Vietnam assignment or even the possibility of it at this point. I kind of forgot about all that.
Okay. Now, is this something that you were doing after you had started at Hillsdale?
No.
Okay, so before.
This is before Hillsdale.
Okay. All right.
I was working in surgery at Lutheran Hospital in Fort Wayne as a surgical orderly.
Right.
Great job. Still love the arena of the hospital. And then after boot camp or shortly thereafter, college deferment came through and went to Hillsdale.
Okay. All right. And then when did you graduate from Hillsdale?
In 70,
Mhm.
when it would have been December of
Of
69.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then from there, you're going to go on to active duty, or was that the?
Correct. February
yeah.
something, I had to report to Treasure Island,
Okay. And where is Treasure Island?
San Francisco Bay.
Okay. All right. And once you arrive there, what happens to you?
You're a number, so you wander around like all the other guys and wait for there was very little training, as I recall. We might have been there 2 weeks or so, and we didn't do much. Frankly, I don't remember what I was doing.
You were probably just waiting for assignments.
For sure, but what we did in between then, no marching,
Mm-hmm.
no calisthenics, nothing.
No.
And I can remember we went to San Francisco a number of times. I befriended a guy from Newton, Iowa, who all through active duty, we really became very good friends. And how beautiful the view of San Francisco was at night,
Mm-hmm.
or even during the day from Treasure Island.
Now, when you went into town, did you go in civilian clothes?
No,
Okay, so you
not
go.
allowed.
Okay, you go into town in San Francisco in 1970, looking like somebody who's in the service. How were you treated when you went to town?
Not any different than otherwise.
Okay.
Now, actually, I did go once to a stripless or a bar
Mm-hmm.
where, and I can't remember, somebody Baker or somebody, there was a famous stripper
Okay.
at a bar who totally naked. And Doug and I went there, and it was a shock. Not something I ever wanted to do again. But anyway, not treated any differently.
Okay. Okay. So the anti-war movement or whatever was not something that
Not
affected
big in
you
San
there.
Francisco.
Really?
At that, no, I don't remember any protests. I did go to, when I was at Hillsdale, I went to Ann Arbor, University of Michigan. There were a number of protests, but one of them was about grapes and the farming of grapes.
Yeah. United Farm Workers was organizing that.
I don't remember a Vietnam
Mm-hmm.
protest,
Okay.
but on TV a lot, and
yeah.
they probably occurred in Ann Arbor, but I never attended
yeah.
any of them or went.
Well, there were plenty in San Francisco too. But that's sort of important to know because the assumption is, okay, in a place like San Francisco, it's going to be all totally anti-war, and you shouldn't be going there if you look like a serviceman or you get treated differently and stuff. Yeah, so that's why we ask. Okay, so for you it was just, okay, you're just going to town, and it was not really an issue.
It was kind of fun.
Yeah, did you have a specialization assigned to you at that point?
No,
You were just a general seaman at that point?
Correct.
You could be anything?
3 little white stripes, seamen. Yep.
Okay. All right. So you're there for a couple of weeks. Then what happens?
Then we get the orders. And we all knew maybe Vietnam was a possibility, but of course you're hoping it wouldn't be. And as I look back, to regress just for a second, that last year of college, that especially that last semester, Vietnam now a lot in the news. And a friend of mine from high school went to Vietnam, and he was killed in Hue. And so now I'm much more cognizant of what's going on there, and the
Right.
fear is back here. And I said, I'm going to date a lot of girls. I'm not the least bit interested in one serious relationship. Not going to do that. Then I met her.
Yeah.
And it was all over. So fell in love, and then from the phone booth on Treasure Island, I said to her, I don't know why we can't go pick out a ring. Isn't that a romantic way of asking somebody to marry you? So I was engaged the whole time I was in Vietnam.
Okay.
Anyway.
So what assignment do you get now?
So we get an assignment. They needed 500 swabbies, as we called it ourselves, in Vietnam, right now kind of thing. So no assignment, have no idea what our duties are going to be. And now I'm beginning to get into protective mode, wondering, how am I going to survive this? All this time I assumed that the Coast Guard were the people that staffed, those sailors staffed the river boats that I knew about. And helicopters, I knew Navy had helicopters too, but I wasn't worried about being a pilot, because now my goal is get in and get the hell out as fast as you possibly can. I'm willing to serve my country. Again, they have to know better than I do. And I just want to get in and get out. So they gave us liberty for a whole month, and then now serious training. So whatever month that was, March, probably March or April, March.
Okay.
Shipped off to Coronado for jungle survival training. And now the reality is really striking, and still not connecting all the dots as to possible assignment. And then to Camp Pendleton, Marine Camp, for arms training. M16, 30 calibers, 50 calibers, all that.
Okay. What did the jungle survival training consist of?
What I remember about it is the bottom lines were, if you're in the jungle.
Sorry about that. Let's see.
Bless you.
Yeah.
If you're in the jungle, stay still. Do not move, because if the VC is around you or the NVA and you move, you increase your chances of getting caught. And playing cops and robbers and all cowboys and Indians as a young kid, and I watched a lot of westerns and stuff like that. That was pretty intuitive to me. And the other takeaway was, if there's no food and you're stuck out there for a long time, cut yourself, find something to cut yourself with, and let the flies lay maggots and eat the maggots for protein.
Okay. Did they do any sort of escape and evasion thing, or just the hide?
I think mostly hiding.
Okay. Because some people got a more extreme version of that course, where they were getting chased and made into POWs and waterboarded and all of that stuff. But I take it you did not get that.
No, believe me, I'd remember that.
Yeah. Okay. So you've done that. All right. So then you go on to Camp Pendleton there, and now you're getting
Which was fun,
Yep.
because I hunted a little bit when I was a kid, and again, playing cops, cowboys and Indians,
Yep.
and could shoot a rifle quite well. I shot some skeet, hunted a little bit, and was very good at a rifle. So this was kind of fun for me. And observing the power of a 50 caliber machine gun from a mile away or whatever.
Yeah.
Whoa, that was fun. Not that I wanted to do that when I got over there, but it was fun.
All right. And then from there, do they ship you to Vietnam?
They did.
Okay. And
A couple more weeks off, as I recall. And then the flight to Travis, and from Travis to Hawaii. First time I've ever, and only time I've ever been to Hawaii. Not a fun way to go. And from there to Clark, Guam, and Vietnam.
And where do you land in Vietnam?
Saigon, Tan Son Nhut Air Base.
Okay.
And all of us will never forget at what point, how many miles out from the airport, pretty close, they drop so fast, and we're all sardined in here, of course. Oh, and then the humidity in Guam, they let us off the airplane for a little bit, and we're wearing our dress blues. And now we're close to the equator. And the shock of the humidity getting off that airplane, that's another thing I'll never forget. So reality is now really beginning to hit. And so at whatever altitude we were, so 30 7,000 feet, and all of our innards are going this way, the G-force going down, because as we can see out the window, all these bomb craters all over this part of Vietnam. So they don't want to get the airplane shot down, so instead of coming in slowly like they do in the US, really fast, land. Then assigned to the Annapolis Hotel, as it was called. Beautiful hotel.
What actually was it?
It's another facility where incoming enlisted naval people sit and wait for their next assignment. There are bars and cages, metal wires all around the hotel, which as I recall, was a 3-story building to keep grenades from penetrating windows and doors and such. And there were guards outside and all around. And I had to stand watch a few times with my M16 on top of the roof, looking over, seeing rats that were seriously as big as medium-sized dogs scurrying around the garbage. Didn't get out of the hotel, as I recall. You're kind of stuck there, except when I got smart.
Okay.
Before I left, a friend of mine was in the Marine Corps, and I met with him and wanted to find out about Vietnam. What was your experience? What can you tell me about? He was back at this point. I can't remember if that was on leave or end of his first tour, if he even served a second one. I don't remember any of those details. He was a good friend in high school. And he said, Navy, there's a place that we went through called Nha Be. And it's in the northern tip of the Mekong Delta. But they had a lot of firepower. They had gunboats, they had Sea Wolves, Navy helicopters. There's an ARVN, South Vietnamese Army Navy Army base behind it. I never saw that. I don't remember. Believe me, I heard the howitzers going off, but I never saw the base. He said they had a pool. Really? He said it's maybe one of the safest places we've been through for a base. And so okay, Nabe, I remember that. So I get at the Annapolis Hotel. Everybody's just wandering around waiting. No duties, nothing. I mean, you eat, you walk around, and I look on the wall, and there's a big map of I-Corps, the southern half of Vietnam.
Actually,
southern third.
I-Corps was the north. So your 3 Corps is Saigon, the 4th Corps is
Okay,
part
3
of the
Corps?
south. That's to be the Saigon area. And then the Mekong Delta proper is 4th Corps. But anyway.
Okay, so whatever
Whatever it
Corps.
was,
I
yeah.
always thought it was I-Corps. But anyway, and I'm looking at this map, and I like looking at maps, and I'm trying to figure out where we are and what's around here. Nabe. What? And somehow, not sure how, I found out there was a mail run to Nabe. Again, don't ask me. It was God working with me. It was having enough of this and enough of this to avoid being in combat. And so I discovered who did the mail run, and it's a Jeep with a 30 on the back, guys carrying their M16s. I start talking to them, found them, don't know how. Hey guys, can my buddy and I hitch a ride with you guys to Nabe? And they said, sure. So one day, within this 2-week period of time, I figured I had to do this pretty quickly because I'm waiting for an assignment. Don't want this assignment to be in combat.
Yeah.
So I my friend Doug and I hop on the Jeep. Down we go to Nabe. It's around 50 miles, as I recall. And we're looking at vehicles along this whole route, nothing but rice paddies, water buffalo, Vietnamese bent over playing with the rice, and vehicles that had been shot up and burned up from battle along the way. And so we're nervous, and these guys are carrying their M16s and their 30 on the back and all that stuff. And I don't know about this. Well, we get there and get in, because we're in uniform, green Navy uniform, and nobody asked us any questions. We didn't ask permission. We were basically AWOL for the day. It was a one-day trip, I guess once a week or so. And the mail guys deliver mail to the mailroom, and we stay out in the hallway while they're in the mailroom. They didn't ask us to come in. There's this window in the wall, and I get a drink of water from this upside-down bottle, and there's a guy sitting right there, and I started asking him questions, just being friendly, whatever. And I mentioned I'm a reservist, have no assignment, waiting at the Annapolis Hotel. He said, I'm a reservist too. I leave here in 2 weeks. How would you like my job? And I'm thinking, is this how the military works? And I said, what do you do? He said, I matriculate all incoming naval officers in what I thought was I Corps, lower third of Vietnam, or quarters, whatever it was. And I maintain their records. I type up all the stuff that they require for military records, issue their secret or top secret clearances, and that's what I do. And I said, he said, can you type? And I said, no. And he said, lie. I said, be happy to. I said, what about my buddy? He said, well, the guy in the mailroom leaves the same time as I do. I said, please. And I thought, the likelihood of this guy, who was a YN3, okay.
So yeoman third class.
Yeoman third class. What's the likelihood of him being able to swing this? I mean, he's got no rank.
Yeah.
And so we hightail it back to Saigon Hotel. We get our orders. Nabe. No duty. Just Nabe. I mean, seriously, military? You would think they would send you there with a job assignment. No job assignment. So since I'm now housed there in this open barracks with a screen, just a roof and a screen, it's pretty close to the pool. I can say that, yeah, there was an above ground pool. Very small, but it was a pool, salt water. And so I get interviewed by a Lieutenant JG. Thank God, he's a reservist also. So he basically asked me, what do you want to do here? And maybe I have some jobs for you. And the first thing he asked me about is a salvage diver, because he saw I was a swimmer in school. And I said, I'm looking at the river, and you can't see this far in front of your face. It's like the Colorado River. And only huge. I mean, this river is really, really wide right here in Nabe, virtually all around us. And I said, how long's the training? He said, 6 weeks. And I said, would I have to extend my duty? And he said, 6 weeks. I said, no thanks. So after a couple other opportunities, he smiled and he said, you really don't want to stay here very long, do you? And I said, correct, sir. I asked him, what's the shortest training you have? And he looks at his spreadsheet here or whatever he's looking at. He said, forklift orientation. I said, how long is it? 3 hours. I'll take it. I mean, how hilarious is this? So I said, my buddy, yep, same training. So a couple days later, we get assigned to a chief who is in charge of stock, whatever, and 45 minutes later, we finish our training on a forklift. I mean, how difficult is that?
Yeah.
And we spend the rest of the afternoon in the enlisted men's club drinking beer. And so we're staying in the barracks. They have watchtowers. They have bunkers. I mean, this is war zone. And we have to stand watch several times. 30 caliber machine guns, and I've got pictures if you're interested in any of this stuff. And there's all this razor wire and everything all around, and now you're freaking out and hoping nobody is going to attack you, because I believe in serving my country. I do not believe in it enough to kill somebody. I'm more worried about that than I'm getting shot at, frankly. And all of a sudden, our assignment comes through. Officer personnel, mailroom. He swung it. Shocking. So we go. My commanding officer does this faster than anybody, just index fingers, than I've ever seen anybody type with one finger each hand in my entire life or will ever see. He didn't know how to type. So I ordered this correspondence course, how to type. Taught myself how to type. One of the best skills I've ever had. Came in very handy the rest of my life. So that's what I did for 11 months.
All right. So what are the kind of physical living conditions like there?
Well, this was another piece of luck in using this. After the first experience of having the base get hit or close to it, now remember, this is an open barracks, open screen barracks, and it's hot. I mean, have you ever experienced, it's like 448 miles from the equator. I mean, it's really, really hot. And you do acclimate, but I was just brand spanking new and still acclimating. And all of a sudden I hear all these explosions. Not many of them, but a few. I freeze. And as I recall, there was this much sweat in my bunk. I was on the top bunk. And I've never experienced this kind of noise and firepower before. It wasn't like Pendleton. I mean, this was loud stuff. And a guy grabs me by the arm while he's pulling me out of the bunk. He said, "What in the hell are you doing? Get in the fucking bunker." So he pulls me out. We head for the bunker. This is my first real experience at being close to war. And so it's hot, it's all that, and then Doug and I you walk around the base when your time is off. So you work 12 hours a day and you have Sunday off, but you're able to walk, run, work out. They had a little teeny gym. They had a USO office where you could listen to music and read books and magazines and stuff. And so we're walking around and we see this weird looking boat docked there right at the edge of the river, where next to all the river boats, all the gunpowder, everything else, all these gunboats. And here's this weird looking structure that's a boat. It's not really a ship, it's a boat, a barge. There was no motor on it. It had to be pulled from somewhere. So we kept looking at that, wondering what's that thing? It's 2 stories, as I recall. So we just walk on board one day, start wandering around. All the hatches are closed, and we get in there, it's air conditioned. It has nothing but bunks, 4 4 high, lockers, showers, bathrooms, sinks, etc. And so we thought, well, what is this thing? It looked like it was a berthing boat, strictly to sleep on. And so we go in there at night once. I mean, there's hardly anyone in there. What the heck is this boat for? So several nights in a row we go in there. Nobody there. Hardly anybody there. And when I say hardly, this one room or area we were in looking at was probably had 50 bunks in it, and there might have been 10 guys in there. So we move our stuff in. Nobody notices we're gone. Nobody asks. This is military. And so we move in, we play it by ear, don't even tell our CO. We're in this berthing, we're not telling anybody. We move in lock, stock, and barrel. Saltwater showers, saltwater sinks, you brush your teeth in salt water. It was clear, pretty clear, but it was pumped from the river and then cleaned out. We didn't care. I mean, with saltwater showers and that humidity, you shower, and maybe even with fresh water, and the minute you get out in that heat and humidity, you feel like you didn't take a shower. That's okay. Air conditioning, no screens. I mean, it's solid. We spend the whole rest of the time there. And then we got out of watch duty, which was in the middle of the night most often. And in retrospect, I don't know if my commanding officer got us out of that, because we had a day job. Officers would come in to be matriculated during daytime hours. And so he probably got us out of watch duty because he wanted us to be able to function. Or because we were on the berthing boat, nobody was in the barracks, the open air barracks, to assign us. So we got out of it. So again, I got out of even being exposed to the possibility of shooting someone.
Now, did you ever find out what the function of that berthing boat was? I mean, were there
Just
people?
that. For, my guess is, for river rats, as we call them, guys on the PBRs, the Patrol Boat River, jet boats with 50 on the front, twin 30s on the back, blah, blah, blah. The ones that went up and down the canals and patrolled the river and everything. If they needed a little break because of PTSD or whatever, or maybe even my friend who came through from the Marine Corps, maybe they were allowed to stay there. Never saw any Army. I don't remember the uniforms. And the only weird experience was a guy from whatever outfit came through and had obviously been drinking, and he rolled a grenade across the linoleum or whatever it was, all the way across the boat. He just kind of tossed it. And I'm just going like this. Please, hope he didn't pull that pin. That was the only weird experience in that. Otherwise, that was heaven.
All right. Now, as you, I think you had mentioned before, so that what was actually at the base? What was going? So you had the riverboats were there. Who else or what else was there?
Well, and I didn't know it at the time. SEAL Operations Base. Not until I read a book, just about 10 years ago or so, because I love reading about SEALs. Never wanted to be a SEAL, but because I never wanted to be regular, okay, that long. I wanted to get in and get out. But the river patrol people, the river rats, always led by an officer. And I remember matriculating one naval officer. He was a full lieutenant. He was a supply officer. This was his last year of 20 years. And they put him on a boat. The mortality rate that I'd heard at the time, 50% on those boats. They're fiberglass. Rockets can go right through them. They're like sitting ducks. And boy, was he mad and took it all out on me. What am I going to do? And I felt so sorry for this guy. But so there were the river rats, there were seals that we never saw because they hung up strictly by them, ate it separately, slept separately, all that. And then the sea wolf pilots and mechanics and all that. And then the gunboat people, so there were bigger boats that were gunboats with flamethrowers, rocket launchers, grenade launchers, 50s, more firepower than you'd ever want to, that you needed frequently. But I mean, it was crazy. And those were the boats that would either deliver or pick up the seals. And then the sea wolves. And then the sea wolves, of course, Hueys with rocket launchers and machine guns, and then Cobra gunships with mini guns, rocket launchers, terrific firepower, terrific. And then the people who did their stock jobs, the guys who really ran the forklifts, and the supply people, and
Was there a medical facility there?
no, kind of surprising. Big one in Bintui. That's another job I thought of. I investigated being a chaplain's assistant. Then I found out they went way down in the Delta. Mito, Bintui, and the books that I read after getting back from Vietnam about where the SEALs were and all the crap that went on there. I was really glad I didn't get that job either. I thought that'd be pretty safe, but not necessarily.
Okay. All right.
So a lot of support people.
All right. So basically you were there in that job, kind of your full time there?
Correct.
Okay. So within that time span then, so when did you get there, roughly? When did you actually get out?
April.
Okay, so you're April 1970?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. And then you're there until, was it?
May of 71. No, I'm sorry.
February?
Okay, April of 69.
I think when we were doing your paperwork, it was
April
of
of
70 until February of 71? That was what you
No, it was it was 11 months.
Okay.
So February of 70.
Okay.
And then April of 70 through May of 71.
Okay.
Because I was married in June.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Because they let us out a month early to go on the Freedom Bird back home.
Okay. I guess
Sorry,
I'm not sure the math is adding up for 11 months that way.
April 23rd. Oh, maybe no. It must have been May, February, March.
If it's May to April, that would work. Anyway, okay.
Whatever.
Well, roughly.
It was 11 months.
So you basically you have better part of a year there.
I
All right. Now you mentioned.
I used to never forget those dates, but you know what? Some dates you just don't want to remember. Okay. It's okay.
All right. Now you had mentioned that not too long after you got there, there was some kind of bombardment of the base. Was it? Do you know if it was rockets or mortars or just noise?
I was led to believe that those were rockets.
Okay. That those would be louder than the mortar fire, but
Yeah.
now was that a common?
Mortars? No, there was so much firepower all day, all night. There were firefights with the helicopters. Now you couldn't hear the PBRs and the gunboats going off, but all day, all night, I would frequently go on top of the berthing boat and write letters to my fiance, take pictures, just sit and listen and watch. All day, all night, you can see tracers and smoke going off. So it was really hard for the VC or the NVA, whoever was out there, to get close enough to mortar. No way. Rockets, it was so far, it was hard for them to hit the base.
Yeah.
The wind frequently or whatever. But the sea wolves were out there all the time protecting the base.
Okay. Now,
But that noise, that was loud, really loud.
so with your job, you were basically checking everybody in. Did you do anything in terms of reporting casualties, or did that go
No,
somebody
no,
else?
not my job.
So if an officer got killed, that wasn't your problem.
I had no idea if he got killed.
Okay. All right. So over the course of the time that you're there, what particular either individual events or more general impressions kind of stand out for you? What particular things happened that?
And this was consistent with the other stuff you shared in your presentations at Aquinas. The lack of coordination, lack of, well, several things. Number one, you're a number. Doesn't matter what your job is, how long you've been in the Navy or any military, when they need you somewhere, you're going, whether you like it or not. Now, if you've got a lot of influence, I suppose you're super high level, you have some influence, but even then, if you're needed somewhere, you're a number, you're going. Number two, the lack of coordination, the lack of planning almost, or how long it takes to implement plans. And I know it's, my God, talk about bureaucracy and a huge system and on and on. Working in hospitals for 30 years, I understood bureaucracy and all that stuff, but this was just a whole different league. Then lastly, well, no, two more things. Then the ability to manipulate the system to a degree, but for me it was self-preservation, and not to try to cheat the system, but just use my head. And I was older than the 19-year-olds and 18-year-olds who were out on the river boats and stuff, thank God, because I saw plenty of those guys. I mean, when you're walking around in the, on Sunday and you see all these guys on the boat wearing their, ammunition belts around and their bandanas and smoking pot and all that, and being proud of their weapons and everything else, and, very easily influenced and thinking, this is cool. No, it was not cool. And so the ability to use your head to save yourself and to not have to shoot anybody was such a serious goal. The other thing was the commitment by the guys who were out there on the rivers and the canals protecting the base. I mean,
So I take it some of those men became casualties, or you're not really sure?
oh, I'm sure they did.
Oh, yeah.
I thought about hitching a ride once to, hey guys, take me out there. I mean, I have some beautiful pictures of those Cobra gunships and those Hueys and those boats. I didn't know any who lost their lives, but 50% mortality, hello. And I know some that didn't come back, some ships, some helicopters that didn't come back. I saw the results of some that were hit right on our base, on the pad. And they're out there shooting all day and all night. So every time a helicopter goes by now,
that memory comes back.
sorry about this.
That's okay. That's okay.
And it wasn't even in combat.
Yeah.
But I saw way too many body bags delivered to Saigon. I went to Saigon very few times, but helicopters would bring those body bags in, whatever branch of the military, drop them off at a drop-off point to get them onto the plane back home.
Yeah. Did you get any sort of unusual or different assignments while you were there, or any special assignments, go this place, do this other thing? You mentioned you went to Saigon.
No.
When you went
The only reason I'd go to Saigon, we went to the PBX to buy some stereo equipment, cameras and so forth, and to call my fiance. Ham radio. Hello, honey, over. That's the only way.
So there's a relay of radio operators that have to pass along the messages back and forth.
These were volunteer ham radio operators, various parts of the world, and they would relay for you. And I think I did that 2 or 3 times. But I wasn't interested in being exposed on the road, on the way to Saigon or back and forth. And so I stuck on the base because I felt pretty safe there.
Right. Did they have Vietnamese on the base?
Yes.
At least in your area?
Our secretary was a Vietnamese woman. The village of Nabe, pretty small village, loaded with prostitutes, restaurants, and bars, and filth. And I have, again, some great pictures. All these hooches that were way high because of how high the tide would come in. And
so they're up on stilts, basically?
Yeah, up on stilts, and all fabricated, cut up beer cans as siding, and on, and the poverty and the no toilets, and I was just crazy. And you carry your laundry into the village to get your laundry done, and these little boys and girls this high would come out, hey, sailor, come do my sister, come do my sister. And clearly not interested in doing that. And I'll never forget sitting in, I needed a wisdom tooth removed, and I was sitting in the dentist's office. We had did have a dentist there on the base who, I don't know where he came from or whatever. And these 2 young sailors were sitting next to me, and there was a chart on the wall behind them of the incidence of gonorrhea cases on the base, or Navy, or wherever the data was. They were just laughing their hearts out this was the 2nd or 3rd time they'd been treated for gonorrhea. They were just having a hoot about it. And I'm thinking, you guys are nuts. So I went to one bar once, and a girl sat on my lap, and I get off my lap. I just, no thank you. So very little bar use there, couple times. Laundry, yes, I would run sometimes. Out there, you could leave the base to run down the road a little bit and back. I would do that. And food, wouldn't even eat the food. Hot soup once. I thought, okay, if it's been boiled, that's got to be safe. And it was spicy, yes. So that was it.
All right. Now, you mentioned that some of the guys from the boat crews and things, they'd be smoking marijuana or whatever. Did you notice much drug use in that base?
No.
Okay.
No, nobody in officer personnel, to the best of my knowledge. Right. There was just a supply enlisted guy, my friend Doug in the mailroom, me, our CO, a chief. That was it.
Yeah. I just think, in terms of what, I was thinking more in terms of what you'd observe on the base, but I guess you were kind of living off in your own place, and you worked in your small office and kind of kept to that particular world.
Absolutely.
And the rest of it was just kind of going on around you.
Well, after I was off duty at probably just before dinner time or so, I'd go eat, go run, go whatever, and then just walking around taking pictures, whatever, looking at the gunboats and the helicopters and everything, and then came back to my office and wrote letters and listened to music and stuff like that. So it was a PUD job.
Did the pace of the action or whatever outside of the base, in terms of the amount of fire going on, did that change at all during the course of the year, or is it just pretty much always the same?
The only thing I noticed were there were more because of the Vietnamization process, there were more Vietnamese sailors replacing American sailors on the PBRs. Don't know about the gunboats, not the helicopters, I don't think. And but the boat traffic, the gunboats, the PBRs, the Seawolves, fully active the whole time.
Okay.
Every single day, all day.
All right. Did you take an R&R while you were in Vietnam?
Yes.
Okay. Where'd you go?
Was supposed to. I wanted to go to Australia. Couldn't find anybody to go with me. A buddy, the supply guy, wanted to go to Bangkok, and I thought, not excited about that, but I don't want to go alone. So okay, I'll go to Bangkok. So, we were supposed to be. There was an in-country R&R you could go to, 3 days. We were at Tan Son Nhut Air Base, ready to go to Vung Tau, which was supposedly beautiful in-country R&R spot right along the South China Sea. Parrots Beak invasion. Every airplane used for the invasion. So right back to Nabe. But went to Bangkok. And you want to hear about that story? Because that's amazing.
Yeah.
This guy that I went with, Mel, I don't know if he'd been there before, but he was familiar with it at the very least. He was a career guy.
Okay.
And so we went to a bar, and it was more of a nightclub. And he said, he was explaining to me there are, number one, prostitution is legal in Thailand. Number two, they're cheap. And I said, Mel, I'm engaged. You can do whatever you want to do. I'm engaged. So I go to the restroom. He and I go to the restroom after drinking a few beers. And along this fairly long corridor is this big, huge window in the wall. You look in the window, there must have been 30 girls in there, and they're watching some soccer game. And they're just hollering and yelling and having a ball about all that. So long story short, he dances with one, hires her for, I think it was $25 a day. So the three of us, she gives us a tour of Bangkok and the surrounding area. I mean, she's Thai. She knows all this whole area. She lives in Bangkok. So that's what we did for a week. Just had a ball showing them, just taking pictures, and they slept with them by themselves, and I slept by myself, and that was it. But what I learned from that was the value of that was that I thought the experience I had with the filth, the prostitution, the horrific nature of a war zone in around Nabe, that my impression might have been that's what all Asians are like. No, Bangkok was clean. Most people, except a few cab drivers, spoke English because their king had been educated in Boston, at Boston University. So he mandated, this is the way we heard it, mandated English in schools in Thailand. And the people were beautiful and friendly, and it will always be a great experience.
All right. So what's it like going back to Vietnam after that?
It was all right because I felt safe. Because of the, again, those guys.
Right, right. Okay. Are there any other particular memories that stand out for you from the Vietnam tour that you haven't brought into the story here yet? And there you might, you could even look at your notes.
I don't think so. Was I happy to know that I would be let go a month early? Yes. Well, everybody kept a short timer's calendar. So the minute you got there, you learned that this was what the guys would do, or gals. And so every day you're marking off another day. Oh, the other kind of interesting thing was traumatic for both me and my wife to be. We wrote a letter every day because I had an office job. I could do that. She wrote a letter every day. Sometimes it would go 6 or 7 days before you would get any letters. She thought, here comes a dear, she was going to get a Dear John letter from me,
Yeah.
you know. And I thought I was going to get a Dear John letter from her. And so, or she thought I was dead, because I wasn't about to tell her what was really going on there and all that. But that was unusual too. And then I remembered, I thought that the mail runs from Saigon, all the letters went into Saigon, all the mail, all the correspondence, and out to Saigon, and then out of Tan Son Nhut, of course. And those were weekly mail runs. So of course it took 6 days for all of them to come. But
All right. So how do you find out that you're leaving early?
just the order. My
Order
CO brought me in,
Okay.
and he said, "You're going to be let go early." Hallelujah. He was a good guy, real good guy. Oh, the other thing, fascinating thing was, when Doug and I were in Milwaukee, or in Great Lakes.
Great Lakes. So that's
Great
not
Lakes
you're not
Naval
you're still in Illinois at that
Yes,
point.
yeah.
But yeah.
But back then.
Yeah.
So it's 11 at night. Or close to 11. We went to a bar. The Liberty boat leaves at 11. That's the last Liberty boat to go back to the base. So we're running along whatever street in Milwaukee.
Okay.
And it's like 11 at night. I mean, like 10 to 11, something like that. It's dark, no cars at all. All of a sudden, a police car. We turn around, can't be us. We keep running. He stops us, and he said, "I'm going to arrest you guys, give you a ticket for jaywalking."
Milwaukee. Yeah.
We're looking around. There's nobody. There are no cars, no nothing. And I was so mad. I said, I'm ignoring that. 6 months later, my CO brings me this letter. He said, they got to be paid. So unless you want to just be hassled forever, just pay the fine and get it over with. 6 months later. Seriously, what a joke.
Yeah. All right. So how do they get you back to the States?
And I can't believe I don't remember this. What base? It wasn't back to Travis.
Well, they got Fort
Oh,
Lewis?
Long Beach.
Okay, Long Beach. Okay.
Yeah, Long Beach. And then just waiting around again for final discharge, whatever. And then, not sure how I learned about it, but I was also excused from serving that required year of active reserve duty. So you're still committed to the full 6 years. They could pull you up any time. But, no, so talk about a piece of cake,
So,
really.
so you didn't have to be a weekend warrior.
No,
Okay.
thank you.
All
No
right.
weekend warrior.
I need to pause at this moment.
All right.
So
I'll look at this and see if there's anything I've forgotten.
Did you come up with anything you left out of the story?
No.
Okay, good. I actually wanted to back up just a little bit. A lot of people talk about the experience of getting on the Freedom Bird or the flight that takes you out of Vietnam. Do you have any particular memory of that? Just getting onto the plane and...
Getting on?
Yeah.
Well, because when the Parrots Beak invasion was called and we were supposed to be headed to Vung Tau, my head kind of went there. You kind of don't really believe you're going to leave until that plane leaves the tarmac. At that point in time, I thought, okay, we're out of here. I didn't really worry about getting shot down, any of that. I just, so then it's over. It's really over.
Okay. Now, at this point, so all they're doing is they're just discharging you, and you're on your own now. Okay, so there's no other obligation. Do they, is there any kind of sort of medical check or anything else for you as you leave, or?
Not that I recall.
You're just off.
No mental health check, no physical check, nothing.
All right. And so how do you get back home? Do you fly, or what do you do?
Yeah. I fly into Detroit.
Okay. And did you go in uniform, or were you in civilian clothes?
I was in uniform.
Okay.
Carrying a stuffed koala bear.
All right. And so...
To meet my bride-to-be.
Okay. And did you see any protesters or anyone in the airports, or did anybody treat you funny because you were wearing a uniform?
No, but that's when you heard a lot on TV, newspapers about soldiers and sailors not being booed, etc., from serving.
Yeah.
Yeah, not a popular thing.
Yeah. Well, the coming home stories do vary widely. Some people, it was just fine. Others got hassled in different ways, and it just depended on where and when you were. But for you, okay. So now you're back, and you get married pretty quickly after that.
In June.
All right. And so now that you're out, what do? Do you go get a job somewhere, or what happens now?
I knew at this point I didn't want medicine. So I thought maybe business of some kind. And a friend of my dad's again, this Essex Wire Company.
Yeah.
He was vice president and general manager of one of the 12 divisions of Essex Wire. So I was hired as a junior executive, and for a year to two or so, you are in sales. It was the wholesale division of Essex Wire, mostly small wire, some of it big. There were other divisions that handled the wire that went into electric locomotives, and we're talking millions and millions of dollars of wire. But mine mostly small wire, insulation that goes in small motors. So I visited from Indianapolis all the way to the Kentucky border, but still in Indiana. That was my territory, to visit mostly small motor repair shops, a big, huge Western Electric factory, things like that, to try to sell them these supplies. And then I would have a little longer, I did that a year and a half, and then eventually promoted, I suppose, to a management position of some kind and whatever. And then my boss was fired. He brought the business up from $4 to $42 million a year in sales in just 4 years, and he was fired. The president of the company, and all these people are friends, and my dad was one of these friends and all that, and the president walked in front of me. I was meeting with Fred, my boss, and the president walked in. These people hung out socially at the Fort Wayne Country Club, and he said, "Fred, how long are you going to be here? Or no, how long is it going to take you to pack?" And my boss said to him, "What do you mean pack? Where are we going?" He said, "You're no longer with Essex." Right in front of me. Walked right out. he was worried my boss wanted to take over the presidency of the company. That's my speculation.
Uh-huh.
So then, he moves to Palm Springs, California, buys a remote control golf cart business that was not a good product, redesigns the whole thing, and calls me, and he asks me, and this is very quickly after all this, firing and everything, because I hadn't been let go yet.
Yeah.
Didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And he said, I want you to be my vice president of marketing. You'd live in Palm Springs area. And then I pictured myself, now I'm a traveling salesman, okay, but just by car.
Yeah.
But never gone overnight. Rarely overnight. And I pictured myself flying all over the nation, first, all these country clubs and all that, trying to sell this golf cart. And I said, Carolyn, I don't know what I want to do. And her sister says, you love hospitals. You worked in them for a few years. You've been exposed to them since you've been 8 years old, going on rounds with my dad. You love business. That's called hospital administration. And I said, I thought doctors ran hospitals. So I looked into it. You need a master's degree. And then you are actually one of the administrators that run the hospital. Ever since then. Now that's what I want to do. So I got a job at another hospital in Fort Wayne as an administrative trainee. Did that for a year, and then was hired by another guy in a smaller hospital, be senior vice president in a little bitty hospital. He was helping me. It was just for the title to help me get into grad school. Then applied to Minnesota, Missouri, can't remember where else. Got into Missouri, 2 years academic program, out, first job, Omaha, and then on and on and on.
Okay. So now, did you have GI Bill funding to help pay for that?
Absolutely. GI Bill, wow, huge help for grad school. Housing, our first house, 12% interest, but it was no down payment, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it was heaven. So, and now I get my hearing aids through the VA. I love this clinic here in town. I love the VA.
Okay. So how did you wind up in Grand Rapids?
My wife was raised and born in Grosse Pointe, and my mom's family was from Berrien Springs, Michigan, Benton Harbor area. And so we would go visit Granny, and so I was familiar with Lake Michigan and Benton Harbor, that area. And I had the highest paying job with the most responsibility out of grad school than all 25 of our class. Beautiful job, Emmanuel Medical Center in Omaha. Loved the team, loved the experience. And then I got, after 4 years, a recruiter called me and said, I got a job for you. And the CEO of United Memorial Hospital in Greenville, Michigan. And and then I interviewed also for Southwest Regional Medical Center in Fort Myers, Florida. I thought, that's too darn hot. That was a for-profit hospital. That's not really my bailiwick. And so I asked my CEO at Emmanuel, terrific guy. He started working at Emmanuel the minute I was born, May of 1946. In the groundskeeper, he was a groundskeeper. They found out he had a degree in accounting from Stuttgart. Eventually worked himself up to be CFO and then CEO. Loved the man. He's now deceased. And I went to him and I told him about this job. And he said, how much do you want? I don't want to lose you. Well, it was a Lutheran Church of America hospital. I wasn't Lutheran, I was Catholic. If you weren't Lutheran, there was no way you were going to be the CEO. And he didn't have a COO. And I thought, I want to get back to Michigan. I love Michigan. It's close to Grand Rapids. Never been to Grand Rapids, but I thought, all right, it's a nice sized town, same size as Omaha. And Carolyn, being from Michigan, took that job. One of the worst experiences I've ever had as an executive, but saved the hospital, literally. And then the CEO of Butterworth, I was getting to know him, and he asked me for a job, and I said, doing what? And he told me, and I said, no thanks. He said, what do you want? And I said, I want hospital operations. He said, okay, you got it. So he did some musical chairs with the other people, and fabulous job. Fabulous hospital, fabulous job.
All right. So now to look back, I guess, over your time in the service, how do you think that affected you, or what did you take out of it?
Love the question. War is hell. There's no good war. I visited the wall. Henry Harvey Persons, he was in 8th grade when I was in 6th, and because I had ADD, this is my speculation, I couldn't pay attention well and listen to all the conversations between the guys. In Indiana, in the 50s and the 60s, all you did was play basketball, summer and winter. Everybody had a basketball hoop. So there's a pickup game all the time. And then sometimes you're throwing the football out in the boulevard. And if guys would pick on me, H.H. Persons would stick up for me. He's the only guy I know that lost his life in Vietnam, Marine Corps. So war is hell. No such thing as a smart war or a good war. War is cruel. The maturity, though, the appreciation of life, the appreciation of people who put their lives on the line. Sorry, I didn't expect this.
Yeah.
It's not PTSD. It's just appreciation.
Right.
Every time there's a helicopter that goes overhead, I say a little prayer practically. And at Butterworth, one of my responsibilities was ER, trauma, and AeroMed. And I flew with AeroMed, I don't know, probably 10 times. They were all Vietnam veteran pilots. And I really appreciate those people. Aeromedical people, nurses, docs, all pilots, they're terrific people. The devotion of the military and how people really, any branch of the military, how they stick up for each other and protect each other. And I never experienced race, but there was this documentary many years ago about the USS Enterprise. You aware of that?
No.
With that one? And there were racial issues and the reason I was interested in it, because my best friend from kindergarten through high school was on the USS Enterprise. And he would mention a little bit about racial relations and stuff, but he wasn't a racist or anything, so we didn't really talk about it much. But this particular ship at that whatever time was experiencing racial issues. So the captain said to the media department, would you guys walk around and just conduct some interviews, videotape all these people, find out what the hell's going on in this ship, but be blunt with them and let them be blunt. And this one guy from South Carolina that was being interviewed, The sailor who interviewed him said, so you serve with a black guy that's in your squad? Yes, I do. You're a gunner, and he's a gunner. Yep. Do you like him? Well, he's all right. I understand you call him a nigger. Yep. Why do you do that? Because my daddy did. Whoa. And my gosh, were there any black guys on our base? I don't think so. I don't remember seeing one. So race was not an issue on our base, therefore, at all. But I played sports with guys, that black guys, all throughout high school. And race was, I mean, they did their own thing, but race was not a problem at our high school. Northside High School, I found out later, they had race riots there several years after I graduated. What? Come on. Anyway, what other lessons? I think appreciation of having served. I feel proud. I feel good about that. I didn't want to die, but more importantly, I didn't want to shoot anybody. Thank God I was smart enough to avoid that. I could have easily ended up on the rivers. I was on a river base, for God's sake. Kind people, how the reservists stick together, just like the regulars do. They're loyal to each other, and the reservists are loyal to each other, which is kind of a weird thing. And then making friends. You know, even if you're not defending yourself with another guy, so your life doesn't depend on that guy, you knew that if you had to get in that situation, you want to be close to somebody that would. And I've met other men, other women, way after the military, who sometimes I'll say to them, if I was in a war, I would want you next to me, because I knew I could count on them. So there's that kind of I had intense discipline at Kemper Military College, because that's all it was. It was 100% military. There was, you spit shine boots. You removed the lacquer from your brass buckle and had to shine that. They dropped a quarter, you probably heard these stories, on your bunk bed. If it didn't bounce off, you'd have to pay some penalty of some kind, push-ups or whatever. Didn't even shine my boots in the Navy. And of course, when you're in Vietnam, it's those jungle boots, those canvas and leather boots. There was no military Mickey Mouse bullshit, as you would be tempted to call it. Didn't have to put up with that.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. You had the bureaucratic part of it to deal with.
Yeah.
But not the unnecessary discipline or the stuff that got in the way. And in that sense, that's similar to what people in units in the field experienced, because there was just really no room for that when there was other business to be done.
I think the other thing, the first time I really broke down, kind of like today, was Deer Hunter, the movie. Even though not the least bit realistic, it was the first Vietnam subject movie I had watched, and then Platoon, and the jungle scenes and the helicopter scenes and the riverboat scenes in Platoon, shot in the Philippines, jungle's jungle, unbelievably realistic. I think the other thing, and I don't know if it's okay to share this, but the brutality of war one of the guys that came off the river, and I don't even know, I was probably just walking around taking pictures or whatever, and I approached one of the gunboats, river PBRs, and he had photos, and we just started shooting the breeze, and he said, we just got back from a trip from which I took some photos. You want to see them? And I said, sure. So going, and some of these canals are really narrow. I mean, not even a single lane width. And they got in a firefight. And they killed everybody in the village. They laid the victims, the Vietnamese. He never mentioned Viet Cong. I assume some of these, the men were Viet Cong or women, and one woman was pregnant with the fetus blown off, heads blown off. I mean, they massacred all these people. You never heard about this, like My Lai.
Yeah.
And they laid them up along the shore and took pictures of them. And he was so proud of that. And then it didn't, at the time I thought, how are you possibly going to live with yourself as you age? Talk about PTSD, if he has a heart at all. But I only saw that once. And what a point there. So the brutality. Oh, the other thing. I think it was Platoon or one of those movies maybe, where there was a sampan floating, and all the PBRs would stop all these Vietnamese boats going up and down the river, carrying supplies, whatever. And I heard this happen once from the guys on the river, that if they had these thatch baskets there where they would carry chickens, pigs, grain, rice, whatever. And the guys, now they've got all M16s, and there are just 3 of them, but so they stop, and you're on alert because there could be Viet Cong on this boat. And they say in Vietnamese, the sailors, nobody move, stay where you are, we're going to inspect the boat. If there's any movement that's a surprise movement on that boat, you may think there's a Viet Cong there and he's got his AK-47 and you're going to get killed. So unleash. And I can't remember if it was in that movie or if I'm remembering what I was told, but this one incident, for sure that happened, that I was told about. The lid of the basket rose up kind of in a hurry. Here afterwards, if there was a Viet Cong in there or not, all I know is the guys unleashed, they killed everybody on the boat. So war is hell. Oh, the other thing I heard about, friendly fire. And I heard this several times, where the squad leader, the platoon leader, whoever it was endangering the lives of the others. When you get in a firefight, shit happens. You just change the direction of your rifle, and bingo, that threat is gone. I wasn't shooting at him. I was shooting at the Viet Cong or the NVA. But then that threat is gone. And that happened.
A version of fragging.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it does kind of remind you just what it is that war can do to people. And some of it, I mean, as a military historian, you look at that kind of thing, and so some of that is a question of what your culture is or your upbringing is. So if you grow up as part of a Mongol horde, then that's just what you do. But if you grow up in American society, in the 50s and 60s and so forth, that's really not what you're supposed to be doing. And yet somehow you're trained to kill, and you can get into a position where that is now how your mind works, and you do those things. And there were a lot of incidents like those across Vietnam, not usually as big as My Lai, but smaller scale things like the one the guy showed you the pictures of. Those things happened, and in the minds of some of the men, that's kind of where they got to. I mean, you went in, you were a little older and a little more grown up,
and some college.
Just with some clear idea of kind of where you wanted to go, or at least what kind of person you were going to be, and something to go back for.
Yeah.
And so you have more of a moral compass at that point. But for the 19-year-olds or whatever who were just thrown into this, who knows? All right.
One other lesson, I think, and a really important one, would be about PTSD. Not me personally, I don't think.
Yeah, don't mess with your microphone, by the way. Yeah.
About PTSD is that, and I've talked to counselors about a number of issues of I'll call them traumas that happened in my life. A sister's suicide, my parents' divorce after 40 years, the body bags in Vietnam, losing a job, blah, blah, blah. Things that until I had a midlife crisis, I never talked to counselors about. I wish I had done that, Vietnam being one of them. But PTSD is real. And I've encouraged others who have been to Vietnam who have not sought counseling to do so, and I think I was helpful in that event. I've talked to other people who have suffered other kinds of PTSD to get counseling, and one just recently who was driving a car, and a friend of his, a fraternity brother of mine, was hanging out the window at the time, bumpers touched, the car rolled, he was a paraplegic for the rest of his life. And he's still feeling guilty about that. Never got counseling. I think I'll be successful in helping him do that. But then my mind's gone to, as a surgeon in the Japanese theater, the stuff that my dad had to have seen. He was a major when he came out, never talked about it. The stuff, and then a friend of my wife's dad truly served in foxholes in World War II, and then eventually was in Nuremberg and was a witness to the trials there. So that's a whole different issue. But it makes me wonder many times how the soldiers of World War I and II handled all that PTSD they had to have had.
Oh, they had it.
But where did it go?
And to a large extent, it sometimes went into drink. It sometimes went into just focusing on where. But there were the kinds of coping mechanisms that people of your own generation and even younger ones have done when they come back. If they're not getting help, some of them find ways to cope, and others never really do, and it shapes their lives. The military was aware of the problem in different ways in both of those world wars in Korea as well as Vietnam, and they developed different responses to them. I can give you a book about that. But it took a long time. And in Vietnam, mostly brought it forward enough that there is at least more support available. But even today, there's so many different variations of the issues that returning soldiers can have, that fitting everything into one box, like treating PTSD just with drugs, for instance, can be tremendously counterproductive. But there's a whole range of things there. So they all, people found ways to cope, or they didn't, but they certainly had it, and that goes back. I mean, they recognized it even in the Civil War, that there was something going on. And for the military, the problem was always, how do you keep them effective? And so you could send them back to shoot more people. But there was also the recognition that it did have these effects on people that they carried with them.
Dad was, he had just been out of medical school and he hadn't decided on orthopedics, let alone doing a residency yet. So he was assigned to the base at San Antonio for whatever training, and then shipped out to Hawaii. And I would imagine the orthopedic surgery that he ended up doing was extensive. I'm sure amputations and all kinds of
And just
stuff.
reconstruction of limbs and
Sure.
that kind of thing.
Sure. So that's where he acquired his love for orthopedics. And then my mind lately has been going to the number of suicides in Alaska and wondering, is it just the darkness, Alaska is really, really barren. I mean, it's a kind of a nasty place to be, long winters and a lot of darkness and all that stuff. And so I just wonder periodically what's behind all that. And they started addressing that more readily. And then I just read the other day there were 4 suicides last month or something. So it's not stopping.
All right. So I think we can probably wind this up now at this point. I just want to thank you for taking the time to share the story today. You've got some distinctive experiences and you tell it well, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. So we can just switch ourselves off here.
Yeah, I did not expect these emotions at all.